Thank you all so much for tuning in to our Back to School from Home series. I am so thrilled to be able to share this screen with Chris Taylor, who has just been such a gift to our family and to a large community of families and parents and teens and tweens on Facebook, and really to anyone who knows him. Chris, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I just love the opportunity to support parents in general and work with kids, but gosh, what we're going through right now is so crazy. And I just feel like the more information parents can have, the better. And so I'm just so thankful that you invited me to be on here with you. So thank you.
Well, obviously, there's a dual purpose, right? Like selfishly, anytime I get to talk to you, it's just fabulous because every time I come away like, man, that was so insightful. And it's been such a help to our family. But also, and the altruistic part of it is hopefully every parent that watches this will come away feeling that same way. Like they just have a bit more peace and clarity about what to do in a time that has neither peace nor clarity.
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know, Chris Taylor is a teen expert. He's a therapist, he's an author, he's a speaker, he's over 16 years of experience as a parent teen expert. So I didn't just find any therapist or anybody with a degree in mental health and therapy. Like Chris is it. So we are just so fortunate to have this time with him because I'm sure you are booked solid. And we'll be sure to have his website. It's just christaylormft.com, but we'll be sure to link to that so you can reach out to him because he does virtual sessions in this environment, which is clutch. So Chris, let's get right into it. This particular video segment is about mental health and that of our children. So I know when you went to school, they probably weren't like, okay, this class is what to do in the event of a global pandemic.
Definitely didn't have that class. I think I would have benefited from that personally because I think I'm also just making it up as it goes, like we all are. So.
We so are.
Yeah.
That said,
yeah.
Pandemic aside, you are trained and have experience in guiding teens and tweens and families through tough issues, through mental health struggles, anxiety, depression, relational dynamics. And so I know a lot of us, myself included, are really worried about our children's mental health, the isolation, the virtual learning, the distraction, the screen time, the addiction, all of it. From a blanket standpoint, what would you say to parents? What do you say to parents every day that you have these conversations with?
I mean, I start honestly by telling parents right off the bat, you guys are awesome, right? Because there's so much pressure to do this right. And of course, like our kids are on the line here. So, it's the pressure of normal parenting, times a million right now. And I think we have to start with just giving ourselves forgiveness and looking through that lens of like, we're doing the best we can. And there's a famous psychologist, D.W. Winnicott, and he said the goal of good parenting is to be the good enough parent, right? It's not to be the perfect parent, it's to be the good enough parent, right?
Yes.
And it's so important to highlight that. So I always start with that, right? Because that needs validating. And without that, we just get stuck in this loop of like, well, I need to know every little thing and I need to know all the details and I need to say this specific thing in just this perfect way, or it's all going to sort of fall apart or backfire. So that's one. And then I think that has to sort of like, bleed into the child's experience, that they just need to be given space to just do good enough right now too.
Right.
This isn't the time to focus on those perfectionist tendencies. This isn't the time for the 4.2 GPAs in all AP classes. I mean, look, if you can achieve that and your kid's motivated for it, awesome, right? I'm not going to get in the way of that. And I'm going to be like, that's amazing. But the vast majority of kids aren't in that. They're just trying to keep their heads above water. together.
Yeah.
And I think giving permission, because there's so many other impacts. I mean, you named it with the mental health challenges, the rates of depression, anxiety. So I'll kind of back up. Through the course of the pandemic, I have still been maintaining my full course load, which is working with literally 30, teens, tweens, families a week. And so I've had these conversations throughout. I've seen the evolution, the worry, the the uncertainty just play out on a daily basis. But back to the impact to kids, I describe it like this. I personally, and maybe I'm biased because of what I do for a living and the conversations I've been having, but outside of the physical health risk group, right, where you have, the potential for COVID to create, catastrophic health outcomes, I think disproportionately our teens, tweens, and kids have been affected more than any other demographic group. And I say that because of the impact to the mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the developmental stage, particularly of adolescence, right, is about identity formation and peer interaction and taking risks and exploring the world and integrating that into the sense of self. And most of our kids across this country were going to school one day, and literally the next day, they got immediately disconnected. And here we are 4, 5, 6 months later, and they're still in that mind state. And what have they filled that time in with?
Mm-hmm.
Technology use. I mean, so I'm like, a little bit of like, hey, we've got to put some structure around technology.
Right.
And so parents will say, well, what's a good number of hours per day, right?
Right.
And I look at the kids in my office, I'm like, plug your ears because you're going to hate me. I say, about 2 hours, because when you pass that, you start seeing all sorts of issues of agitation, anxiety, and depression start to root and show up. But we get to the pandemic and parents are asking me, and I said, you know what? We've got to give more flexibility to that.
Right.
Because it's now, and it's always been the way that they've connected socially, but now it's the only way a lot of these kids can connect socially. Problem with that is it's gone a little bit on overdrive. So you have kids now that aren't like, I was thinking a little bit more, maybe 3 or 4 hours. You've got kids that are 10, 12, 14 hours a day in front of a screen. And so, it's two-part, right? The addictive quality of it and what it's taking them away from. But the mental health impact of that is an increase in depression, anxiety, and some other sort of irritability, agitation, distractibility type issues. And so now it's like, how do we dial all of that back in? And for a lot of parents, they're experiencing a high level of stress because it's a knockdown, drag out fight to pull the kids away, because it's now fallen into that category of addiction. So I mean, that's a lot. I don't know if that answers your question, but I could talk about stuff related to teens and what's going on in today's world. I mean, I could speak for hours on it. So,
well, that's and I want to first hone in on something you said that was really key. That's something that I've been saying when I've been asked by journalists in the media is, just how much screen time is okay, even in a pandemic. And so, I'd always say, well, pre-pandemic, it was this, but post, now that we're all in this, if you can just do 2 hours at a time. So 2 hours, but take a break, and then another. And so you would concur with that? Like,
oh, absolutely.
okay.
Because what you're doing is you're giving the brain, and that's really what it comes down to, an opportunity to reset and regulate itself emotionally.
Okay.
Technology just has a weird effect on the brain that not a lot of other things do in how it rewires it. And so you always want to be conscious of that. It's like the unseen dangers of,
right.
of overuse of technology. So yeah, absolutely. Those breaks are critical.
So 2 hour break. And then let's back up, because, you and I have both done a lot of personal work and work with others. Like, we will own the mental health card. We do not have a stigma attached to it. Like, we are
absolutely not
let's talk about it.
Yes.
A lot of families maybe haven't even begun to address their own personal issues that they might have. And they also might be afraid that if they talk about depression or anxiety or even suicidal ideation, that they might plant those ideas in their kid's head, and they maybe didn't live there before. So let's just talk about, first, removing the stigma around mental health. And then second, how being vulnerable with your child, how if they see you as not strong 100% of the time, is actually okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the stigma is huge. It's getting better in this generation. I think families now are more aware, but it's still out there. I mean, I have a lot of kids that, you just see the look on their face when they walk in my office, and it's like a pure horror that they're in a
Mm.
in a therapist's office. But then through the course of even just an hour, you see the relief when
Yeah.
they release all that they've been holding on to. There's no secret way about it. It's opening the door and talking about it. Talking about it doesn't reinforce or encourage. In fact, one of the sort of mitigating factors when kids are experiencing suicidal ideation is, are they openly talking about it? If they are openly talking about it, it actually reduces the risk that they're, or the likelihood, I should say, that they will actually act on some of those thoughts. So, right there as a parent, if you're worried at all, know that you just kind of got to go for it and name it. Now, it's not a comfortable conversation. Kids often shut down in response to it. But as a parent, you always want to be in that place of like, did I do the thing that would help? Right.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's scary. I mean, I see parents in my office when I open up that conversation with a kid, and I'll just ask point blank, like, are you having any suicidal thoughts? And you can see the discomfort in the parent, not because they don't want it to be addressed or that they don't, have that level of care. It's just they're so worried, like you said, that that's going to somehow provide like an opening to say, oh, that's an option. And then I educate them on that piece that I just shared with you, as far as when you can get kids talking about it. um, there's a little bit of a misnomer out there right now too, and I always act to dispel it, in that teens live a life of like isolation, and they're in their rooms, and that's like what they want. And I joke with parents, I'm like, no, they just want it in relationship with you, right? But what they're really lacking when they go in their room is that other piece to it, that school attendance, that 6 hours of peer interactions, and opportunity to get outside and spend time with friends. So um, when you see kids isolating, don't always reduce it down to just sort of like, kids will be kids. They like their privacy. They just want their alone time. You don't have to be that super intrusive kind of helicopter parent, but I always say, like, every hour, 2 hours, just a little knock on the door, just to say, hey, how you doing? That can go a long way to just, maybe the kid doesn't open up and share, hours of deep thoughts, but it sends a clear message that I'm here and I'm watching and I'm aware and I love you. And I think that message is one of connection. And so, in a world right now of severe disconnect, when you can provide those moments of loving connection, it makes the world of difference. So
That's really, really key. A lot of parents have just worried that by talking about it, they would introduce the idea. You and I both know that they've probably already been introduced to it through friends, through YouTube, through TikTok, etc. And then also, I know me personally, for the longest time, I was afraid to let my son know that I struggled. Sometimes I thought, if he knew that his mom wasn't 110% strong all of the time, then he would be worried. But it actually shows him that I can have compassion and understanding when he's struggling, and his actions can impact others. And perfection just isn't a good look for anyone, because it's not real.
no, it's not. And I love that. It's modeling.
Hmm.
If the first time your kid needs to do a specific chore, as parents, we sit there and we walk them through how to do it, right?
Yeah.
But yet then when it comes to like talking about their emotions, we just say, well, just talk about your emotions, and we don't stop and think, do they really know how? And I'll say this too, kids, even kids that are angry and disrespectful and defiant towards their parents, still have this deep desire to not disappoint them. And
Right.
so when kids open that up sort of unsolicited, a lot of times what's attached to that is, I'm letting my parents down because I can't sort of like handle life. And so
Mm.
if a parent, like you just so eloquently stated, is able to just walk in there and just say, hey, I'm going to model for you that I also have struggles, that this is a real part of life, that there's challenges. And obviously, you don't want to manufacture challenges or struggles. You want to be honest and direct and authentic in them. But I mean, what more powerful modeling than from a parent to just say, life's hard and I've had this struggle, and I want you to know that if anything like this were to come up for you, that I'm just here to listen. And I think that's the other piece that's really hard, not being the fixer, right?
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's our instinct is like, let me fix it, let me make it all better. And it's unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, part of the process of growing in resiliency and growing in empathy for others. You know, do I wish I had never had a panic attack in my life? Yeah, but also no, because if I didn't, I wouldn't understand others. I wouldn't be able to help them through it and give them hope that they would be able to get through it too. And yeah, there's a lot of things in life that can just have a Band-Aid and some Neosporin, and there are other things that are invisible and that can't. And that's okay. And on that point, what are some good conversation starters? Like, let's say you feel, right, because you have that parent instinct, like something's not right, but I just don't know how to even start the conversation with my child. What would you say to families?
Yeah, it's hard, right? Because personality and interests and dynamics in the family are so varied. I always try to start with like what not to do, because sometimes that's like equally as important. And so I'm a teaser and I'm just a straight shooter. So sometimes that can come off as kind of crass or a little overly sarcastic. So I apologize for anybody that's listening that might hear this the wrong way. But the first thing I do is I tell parents like this. I'm like, you're such an interesting person. Like your life and your jobs and your life experience is so diverse and just fascinating. Yet when it comes to your teens, you literally ask the most boring questions ever. How was your day? I don't know. If somebody asks me like literally every day, like, how was your day? It was fine.
Oroville.
Okay. What new happened? Nothing. It's just same old stuff, right?
Oh.
So so I always start kind of there and I tease, right? But it's
Mhm.
the idea of like show that curiosity and that interesting side of yourself when you connect with your teen, because it's not about saying the right thing or asking the right question. It's about asking questions that open up dialogue and create the opportunity for connection. So it could be something just basic like, hey, like, you know, what's the craziest thing that happened in your day today? I mean, that's more related to when kids are in school. Maybe it's curiosity on like something about, their favorite YouTuber, or, how many wins they have at Fortnite, or, what they're building in Minecraft, or, just like things that allow a parent to enter into their kids' world. Because when you, and I think I've mentioned this maybe before in our conversations, but when you put a kid in the role of expert of themselves, man, keys to the kingdom. And they will open up and share at levels that parents are like, how did you get my kid to like talk about all that emotional stuff? I'm like, well, I started by making it completely non-emotional and just show him that I care about him in terms of like what his life looks like and the interest that I had in what she's doing, or the environment that they exist in, or the stresses and the pressures that they're under. And I just try to empathize and validate. And then they're like, oh, and by the way, this and that and this and that. Because especially now, it's like kids are holding so much in that they just want to let it out. So I think this is a really unique time, and kids are really primed for parents to have these breakthrough conversations. But yeah, it's just being interesting. Ask things that are relevant to the kid and relevant to their life. And parents, when I coach them on this in my practice and they leave, they'll like literally call me back like an hour later, like, oh my gosh, like it worked. And I was like, yeah, I don't make it up. Like I've been doing it for a long time. Sometimes like it's about keeping it simple, right? And just doing the basic things. The other thing is like when a kid shares something that maybe is a little concerning or keys in on that sense of worry for a parent, not reacting or judging that's been said, because that'll immediately shut a kid down, because he learns in that there's no value here.
Right.
And they enter into that, I have to be what's expected of me, and if I'm not, then what am I? I'm disappointing, I'm not good enough, I'm kind of letting down.
And they also don't
um
want to experience discomfort. So if it is not comfortable for them to process your reaction to their already discomfort and unease, like forget it, they'll shut down.
yeah, and then it dovetails back into the other conversation where, excuse me, you want to share yourself with them. And I'll say, not from this, like, I tell parents this, I say, this is the kiss of death. If you want your kid to shut down instantly, say this phrase: I was a kid once too. I know exactly what you're going through. No, we don't.
Cringe,
We don't.
cringe.
Cringy. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to like interact right now because I'm just so uncomfortable. Um, okay, we get it. We were all teens, and there's certain desires to pull away from parents and have independence, but that's a small part of the total story of what kids are going through. So allow them space to define that. Like, what are you actually going through? Like, what does your life look like? Like, do you feel pressured? Like, what is online school like for you? Do you like it? Is it stressful? Is it better? Some kids are like, I like it. It's like the kids that really struggle with some like deep anxiety, I'm finding, are the ones that are like, oh, I don't have to be around like 1,000 kids a day. Like, this is actually like pretty good. But then they live in their head and the anxiety kind of morphs into something else. And so I'm like, you can't have it both ways kind of thing. But yeah, it's entering into their world, understanding. I describe it as like almost like reconnaissance conversations. You're just exploring who they are. If you act like you almost don't even know who they are, wow, what could you learn? And what will you learn? Amazing things. And this isn't true for all kids, and clinical depression is outside of this, and obviously like extreme struggles with anxiety, but real genuine connection, and that tethers kids emotionally. It acts as an anchor in life and really gives them that sense of stability and that the world around them is okay and safe. I mean, that's such a critical piece. And that connection through caring about your kid's unique experience, I mean, it won't, like I said, eliminate depression or stave off all, forms of anxiety, but it can reduce them quite a bit. Um, so anyways, just as a side, when you're looking at your mental health, like connection is key. And like I said
So
earlier,
important.
in a world of disconnect, so it's challenging for sure.
Yeah. So on that note, I thought of two things. First is, um, well, I think three things actually. First is, even an hour spent with you and I isn't going to cure your children if they are really struggling with depression and anxiety. But we hope that this conversation at least opens the door to future conversations you and your children can have together, gives you insight into some paths you could go down, gives you peace of mind to know that you are not alone as a parent, your children are not alone. Children all across the nation are struggling with this, and parents all across the nation are struggling with this. That said, I think the first thing I'd love for you to touch on, because some parents might not know the signs and symptoms of depression and anxiety. You and I were talking even just about motivation.
Mhm.
And so what are some signs that your children might be struggling with depression or anxiety or both?
Yeah, you always want to start by kind of looking at the big three, right? Activity level, diet, and sleep. So if you see your kid that's having irregular sleep patterns, now again, technology use has kind of shifted that. But oversleeping or maybe not being able to sleep, um, their food intake, right? And it should be relative to their activity level. But are they eating, enough calories per day, right? And we're not talking about the quality of foods right now because junk food and teens kind of go hand in hand a lot of times. But are they getting enough calories to sort of sustain? And then their activity level, are they engaging in activities that they have always enjoyed doing? And if there's a stark shift away from those, again, COVID has complicated that because activities have been reduced in what we're sort of like, quote unquote, allowed to do. But even then, maybe there's a pull away from engaging with the family or from calling that friend and asking them if they want to go ride a bike in the neighborhood. Or just go for a walk, in the neighborhood or at a park or something. So, you always want to start there. And then obviously monitoring just overall mood, and, we talked about it, kids aren't going to readily share, but, you can kind of eyeball a kid, are they looking sort of despondent? Are they exhibiting some level of apathy? Is their head hung down? Is the hood on? Is their hygiene compromised? When's the last time they took a shower? Are they brushing their teeth regularly? Are they putting deodorant on? Like, those self-care pieces are huge. Motivation is a big part of it. It's hard because a lot of times when parents look at motivation, we always focus on school, right? Are you motivated to do school? Well, I look at motivation in terms of, are you motivated to do the things that you actually enjoy and want to do? Because that's a better sign. Whereas school can just be, I'm kind of oppositional to it because I don't really enjoy it. And that's not going to really tell you much about the depressive piece of it. And then, are they connecting at all? Right? In whatever capacity, whether it's video games, whether it's Snapchat, whether it's, actual like conversations or face-to-face interaction, are they seeking that out and participating in that? Because if you've got a kid that pulls away from pure interaction and doesn't want to talk to anybody, you got a real serious problem on your hand, because that's what the teen years and tween years, and I mean, I think all years are really about. Again, I'm going to highlight that idea of just connection as being so vitally important. Um, and then anxiety is often one of those things that's really misinterpreted. I'll have kids that come in here and the parents like, I just don't know what to do. My kid is just agitated and angry all the time. And so I'm like, okay, well, what's his level of anxiety? And they're like, no, you didn't hear me. They're angry. They're irritable. They're defiant. I'm like, yeah, like how anxious are they right now? Because anxiety, right, that need to control and just make sense of this like chaotic world, when you can't feel like you have at least some level of influence and that anxiety takes over, it's agitating and it's irritating and it's ever present. And so they're like sort of operating on this like high level of emotional frequency all the time. And so I just check in with them like, are you anxious? And 9 times out of 10, it's like, yeah. It's like, okay, like, what are you anxious about? Well, I'm anxious about all of the social issues that are out there right now. I'm anxious about an election year. I'm anxious about protesting. I'm anxious about counter protesting. I'm anxious about coronavirus. I'm anxious about, you name it. They're absorbing everything that they're witnessing and hearing. They just don't have that adult mind to filter it in and then regulate their emotion in response to it. And so I tell parents, like, check in with them about these topics. And here's the thing, everybody's got a unique opinion and perspective. Allow space for your kid to have their own opinion perspective, even if it's different than yours. Because gosh, if you're meeting something, you got a ton of anxiety and then somebody checks in with you and then you're immediately like told how that's like the wrong opinion to have, or that's like, idiotic, right? I mean, that's just going to like spiral you even further into anxiety and depression. So giving that space, just be like, yeah, what you think and feel and the questions you're having and your place in the world and purpose and meaning and, uncertainty. Yes. Like, let's talk about that. What do you think about that? What's your experience? Again, it's just validating them as a unique person. And it's, it's just a tool that parents have to learn about their kids, but to, I think, redirect a lot of this energy that they're internalizing and kind of pushing down into like just more constructive conversations, honestly.
Thank you so much for going so deep on both depression and anxiety. A lot of people may not know the difference between the two or the overlap between the two, and it's critical to know those differences. Um, Depending on the level of severity that your children might be struggling with, whether it's situational or perhaps a chemical imbalance, um, that deserves further discussion. And again, this one video session with Chris isn't going to solve everything, but that's the next step you need to figure out. Do you need to have an ongoing, weekly session, even virtually with a therapist? Do you need to change diet or just get more physical activity? Do you need to get some medication involved? Or do you need to perhaps enable some cognitive behavioral therapies of, guided meditation, or just naming your feelings? One thing that you helped our family with was just being able to put a name to the emotions that were coming up, and then reframing the way that you felt about them and dealt with them in a kind and patient manner. I would like to close our session, if it's okay with you, with maybe a guided meditation that people could go through. What do you think about that? Is that,
Ooh, yeah.
yeah? How long does that take? Like, could we do that in like 2 or 3 minutes?
Yeah, easily.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
know,
Yeah.
and I describe it like this. I describe it as like so cliche and cheesy because sometimes it's just good to have fun and make light of ourselves and what we're doing and just, be normal about it, right? Not like this guided meditation with Chris Taylor, right? But it's like it's about finding this like proverbial happy place, right? This place that you create that you can go to at any point throughout your day when stress takes over, when you're that mom who can't get their kid to get on the Zoom call to do their math work. And rather than engaging in that like power struggle, you just go, you know what? I'm going to take care of me right now because a better me means a better them, right? Or for the kids, if we can get the kids to do it where they're experiencing this anxiety or depression or uncertainty in the world. So yeah, so I do a specific guided meditation, just a general one when I'm first starting with clients, and it's all about that happy place. So yeah, so if we want to do it, let's do it.
Awesome. So what I'm going to do first is, because when we get to the end of it, we're all going to be super zen, and we're not going to be all like up here, like, yeah, boom, bam, beam, bam. So before we do
Totally.
that, I want to
Yes.
remind everybody where they can connect with you. So you can go to christaylormft.com, where we will have Chris's website linked to, where we are posting this. He has a free book. There's testimonials. He has a blog. He has a great Facebook group too, a Facebook community, where he's really just makes himself super accessible to you. So you can either listen today and bookmark this guided meditation, and if you need it or your kids need it, it's really awesome. You want to connect beyond that, go to Chris's website, find him on the Facebook group that we'll link to, and reach out. Maybe, he can help your family if that's what you think your family needs. So with that, Chris, I guess take us through the thing. I'm going to mute myself. And then
Okay.
when we end up at the place of Zen, we will calmly close.
All right. I like that. Okay. So, the first thing that I want everybody to do that's listening is just get in a very comfortable state. Wherever you are, make sure that you kind of let your arms down by your side, get your feet in a position that, just feels comfortable. Make sure there's no kind of pains or you're not contorted in any way. And just take a couple of minutes, or in this case, a couple of seconds to kind of find that space. And then what I want to do is invite you to close your eyes. And as you close your eyes, what I want you to do is I want you to focus on your breath. I want you to take a 5-second slow inhale through your nose and a 5-second slow inhale through your mouth. And I want you to repeat that. And as you inhale in, I want you to feel that energy come in. And as you exhale, I want you to feel the stress and the worries and all of those negative thoughts flow out into the world. And what I'd like to do is invite you to a place. I'd like to invite you to this place. And as you're standing here with me initially, then by yourself, I want you to look around. And I want you to notice where you are. I want you to notice that as far off as you can see, you see soft rolling hills, as green as can be, covered with soft grass. I want you to notice the sky. I want you to notice the sky is blue. I want you to notice the sun shining, the warmth of the sun on your skin. As you look at the sky, you can see that there's just a few white cotton ball clouds that are slowly making their way across the sky. I want you to notice that although it's a warm day and you can feel the heat of the sun on your skin, that there's a soft breeze in the air that's slightly cooling it off just enough to be comfortable. I want you to notice down at your feet that you're standing in a field of wildflowers. I want you to notice the color of those flowers: yellows, purples, blue, pink. I'd like you to touch a flower. Feel the soft petal between your fingertips. I want you to stay there and notice the veins running through the leaves. I want you to notice that behind that field, not far in the distance, is a big oak tree with a canopy that comes up over you and slightly shades where you're standing. I'd like you to walk over to that tree, feeling the sensation of the earth and the grass in your feet. I'd like you to touch the bark of that tree, feeling the sensation of the bark, the coldness, the roughness, the texture on your fingertips. I would like you to wrap your arms around that tree. I'd like you to experience the feeling of that strong oak that's been there for 100 years, the life that's contained inside of it. I want you to look at the leaves and notice that they're slightly rustling in that breeze. The sound is very pleasing to you, very relaxing. I want you to notice at the base of that tree is a small stream, small creek that's running by. You hear the sound as it goes over a few rocks downstream, the sound of the water being very pleasing and soothing. I want you to continue paying attention to your breath. And as you breathe in, I want you to feel that breath occupying every space in every cell in your body. And as that slow breath for 5 seconds comes in through your nose, it occupies all of that space with love. As you breathe out, I want you to breathe out those worries. I want you to feel the stress from the top of your head melt down through your shoulders, flow down through your arms into your fingertips, down through your back, your hips, your legs, down into your toes. And I want you to see it all flow out into that stream that washes it away as far as your eye can see. And I want you to stay with those breaths as you stay in this place. And for the next minute, I observe you to stay with your breathing and just observe this place that you're at. Find peace wherever you want to. Observe whatever sticks out to you. And just be for this next minute. And when we're done, I'll invite you back. Now, whenever you're ready, I just invite you to come back to being present wherever you are. And I just invite you back to that place whenever you find yourself in times of stress, when the world feels overwhelming and you don't know what to do or what action to take. Go to that place. And there you'll find yourself and you'll find that peace. It'll always be there waiting for you whenever you want it.
That was awesome. That was awesome.
Cool.
Thank you so much, Chris.
You're welcome.
I feel great. I know anybody who went through this feels great. Your practice and your insights are a gift to the world. Thank you for helping my family, and thank you for all the families that you help all across the globe.
Thank you so much. And, thank you for you and the platform that you have and the connection that we've made to, be able to get this information out there. It's so important. And I'm so glad you're out there doing this work for the families.
Awesome. Well, on that note, we will get back to our families.
All right. Sounds
Thanks,
good.
Chris. Okay.
Take care.
Bye.